Well, today what we're going to be doing is putting in a fly zipper. We're just going to do a sample size, so it's going to look a little bizarre, but it works really well for this. This represents the front of our pants, and then just to indicate the other pieces, we're going to have a fly guard, which I've already started sewing together, and I'll tell you about that in a bit. And then we're going to go ahead and have our fly facing. Okay, so we're going to be working with all of these pieces. Now, the first thing that I have done is I have marked my top stitching. Now, on your pattern, it will have the little curved shape that needs to be marked, and I've just marked this with a tracing wheel and tracing paper, and I just used the disappearing, and I really like that. So I'll be top stitching on this later on, but that's just for future reference. The other thing that I've done is on our pattern, we have a little dot at the very bottom, and so I've marked that too. I marked that on the wrong side, and so you can hear, you can see right here, it's just been marked with an X, and I did that on both sides, and I'm going to be matching that up and sewing it, okay? The other thing that I like to do before I ever even start with the pants is I want to seam finish this. Now, you could zigzag it if you wanted to. I don't think that looks as nice as the serging, but I went ahead and serged this, and I made sure not to cut any fabric off, otherwise I would have problems with that. So I am ready to go ahead and begin sewing at this point in time now. So we have got, we're going to be placing this together just with right sides, and we're going to go ahead and match up that little X, and you can just take a pin and just stick it through here, and then go ahead and pop it through the other side. Make sure you've got it matched up nicely, and you can see there it is. And I'm going to be sewing just part of this seam. I don't want to sew the whole thing. We don't want to sew in this area where the zipper is going to go. We just want to sew between the X or the dot, and then we want to leave a couple of inches free right here, so when we sew our inseam. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this now, and I want to be real careful to start exactly at that dot or the middle of the X. So I'm just going to slowly lower my needle down and make sure I'm right on there. Take my pin out before I start to sew, and I definitely want to back stitch this. So I'm just going to sew 3 forward and 3 back. And then I can go ahead and continue. Make sure you have a nice curve there. Like I said, we want to leave about 2 inches from this inseam over where we have not sewn. And so I'm going to kind of guesstimate that, and I think that looks about right. And now I'm going to just go ahead and back stitch. I'm going to cut my threads off. And then I'm going to be ready for my next step. Okay, this is the piece called the fly facing, and we're going to be attaching that now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lay this over here so you can see that better, and I'm just going to fold this whole front pant down. Now, how I'm doing this today, this is really intended for a woman's pant, because just like a shirt, how it laps over right side over left, a fly for a woman should lap over right, right should lap over left for that as well. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to line this up, and we want to make sure that we have about 5/8 of an inch here at the bottom, okay? And you can see I've got about 5/8 left over of my facing. And I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm going to work with that here in a bit, but I'm just going to line the rest of this up. Now, sometimes when you're making this, the fly facing ends up being a little longer up here at the top, and if it is not really a big deal. We can easily trim that off, so don't get it a tizzy about that one, okay? I'm just going to match this up along here. Bring that on up here. Okay, there we go. Now, this is the point that's quite critical right here. We don't want to end up with a really big gap here, because if you do, then you're going to end up having a hole at the base of your zipper. So we want to try to be really meticulous, and I always just kind of stick my fingernail right there, and then I'm going to pop that pin in just to make sure that I'm lined up exactly, okay? And you can see that pin went in exactly where the stitching. So I'm going to try to sew as close as I can to that. And so we're going to just go ahead now and sew a 5/8 inch seam. And once again, I'm going to just backstitch at the beginning, and I'm going to continue on. Okay, and I want to come up here just as close as I can without stitching over. So I just kind of really slowly, okay, I think I'm pretty good there. You can check. I think I'm good. So I'm going to back stitch now. Okay, I hope I did well. Okay, so you can see right here that I've got that stitched up there pretty nice and close, and then I am ready to go ahead. I'm going to clip my threads off as I go. Okay, and I'm ready to trim. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim this seam about in half. Okay, and I know you're going to say, but you're cutting off your serging. Well, the reason I'm doing this now is it is so much easier to serge that whole seam than to wait until after we've got the zipper in, because then it's going to look really ugly with any kind of seam finish underneath. So we try to get that done right away, and then it's going to look really good, you know, after we get it finished up. Okay, so when I get down here to the bottom, I'm just going to go ahead and clip this right across just like that. So you can see that just looks like a square right now, but we're going to take care of that in a second. So now I'm going to grade this seam, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this top layer, just about another 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to turn my iron on real quickly because I know I'm going to need to iron here in just a second. Okay, there we go. And we can go ahead and trim, or grade this, I should say. Make sure when you're doing this, you're not cutting additional fabric. You just want to cut that top layer. Then when I get down to this bottom, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the rest of this fly facing off. Okay, there we go. So you can see how that looks down there now. All right, and then we're going to be pressing this. And we want to make sure to press everything away from the garment, just like this. Okay, we're going to press that away. And we need to, then we're going to be ready for our zipper. Okay. Just make sure to press it nicely. Okay, so now we are ready to go ahead and put our zipper in. Now this is very interesting because it's a little different than what you've been used to with putting in zippers. We want to take and place our zipper so it's going to be right side down, okay? So that's a really important thing. We want to also make sure that from our little dot right here at the very base of our zipper, we have got to have about, I'd say about 5/8 of an inch between that and our bottom stop on our zipper, okay? And so we want to also, and there's lots of little rules along with this, by the way, we want to make sure that our zipper tape is going to be lined up along that facing line, and we're going to pin this into place. Remember, you need to have about 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch. I wouldn't do anything more than 3/4. So from this bottom where the dot is up to your bottom stop right here. And so you can see if I were to measure this, I have got, you know, right at 3/4 of an inch right here. It's probably a little less, but, you know, like I said, 5/8 to 3/4 is good. All right, and then also, that's something really important, is we want to turn the bottom of this of our zipper tape up. That's a really important thing to do as well. And so we've got this is turned up, we've got this extra space right here, and then we have to make sure that our zipper tape is lined up right along our facing. And when I pin this, I'm going to pin this through all the thicknesses of the fabric. And notice our zipper is longer than our opening, but I'm going to show you later on how we take care of that too. It's not a problem for a fly zipper. Okay, now we're going to be basting this in, okay? You could hand baste it if you wanted to, but we're going to just go ahead and use a zipper foot. So I'm putting my zipper foot on, and I'm going to move my needle position all the way over to the right, and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of stitch right down the center of my zipper tape. And we'll be taking this out in just a bit, but it just is going to hold it for while we, stitch length, very important to change it as well. Okay, so there we go. And I'm just going to take that thread. Okay, there we go. So you can see I'm just kind of basting right in the center, taking my pins out as I get to them. And when I get down to the bottom, I want to make sure to just baste over that zipper tape that I've turned up. Okay. And there we go. We got it all basted into place. Okay, now that we have it basted into place, we're ready to sew this. And we want to sew it now on this right side. We want to take and sew that 2 times. We're going to sew it with a regular machine stitch length, and the first time we'll sew close, and then the second time we're going to back off about 1/8 of an inch. So I want to move my needle position. First of all, I'm going to just clear everything out. Normal stitch lengths, and then I'm going to move my needle position all the way over to the left. And I'm ready to start sewing that. And I'll start sewing up as far as I can. Okay. Sometimes those threads like to get in your way. Okay. And I want to back stitch at the top and continue on. And I like to stop stitching right at the very bottom of the bottom stop. And then I'm going to back stitch there. Okay, so you can see we've got 1 row of stitching done now. Then I'm going to go ahead and sew a second row. Like I said before, I'm going to back off a little bit, so the stitches should be about 1/8 of an inch apart. Back stitch. Okay, so there we have that part all done now. Okay, so now I'm just going to trim all these threads off. I'm going to leave that basting tail on here because that'll help me to be able to take that thread out later on. Okay, and we're ready to press now. Okay, so we'll go over here to the iron, and we're just going to take and press this right on the facing line. And we'll have it will roll a little bit underneath, and that really is nice to be able to roll just a titch. Okay, so just line that up there. And we'll just press right along that edge. Now, I use that contrasting fabric so that you can see that we don't want to be able to see that facing on the front, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and pin this into place, and I'm going to pin through all of our thicknesses. All right, so we are ready now to come back over to.
Yep.
Okay, so now that we've got that pressed, we've got it pinned in position, this is time now where we are going to be top stitching this. And we're going to stitch right on that line that I made with the tracing wheel and the tracing paper. Now, I want you to notice that that line is to the left of our zipper. But we shouldn't be worried about that because we have already sewn through our zipper 2 times. So you don't even need to worry that that's not going to catch the zipper, but that's okay. So don't worry about that. We need to move our needle position over, and so I'm going to go ahead and move that over to the right side, and we're going to be stitching on this. Now, one thing you want to make sure that you're real careful of is you can just feel that bottom stop right here, and that's the reason that bottom stop has to be, of the zipper, has to be up so far, is because we don't want to sew through it, because it just doesn't do well with your needle. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off here, and I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm going to try, you want to sew this just as straight as you possibly can, because this is the very front of your pants, and so you want this to look nice and straight and very professional looking. So sew slowly for that curve. That's the tricky part. Sometimes you need to actually pick up your presser foot a bit. Okay. All right. Now I'm not going to back stitch there at the bottom. I'm going to just give myself a little tail here, and I'm going to pull this thread kind of over to the back, and I'm going to do a hand-tied knot. And so, just because I don't want that back stitching to show there. Okay, there's my knot. I'm going to go ahead and clip that off. Okay, and then we are ready to take out that original basting. So you can see there's what our fly is looking like so far. Okay. And so I'm just going to pull this thread out. Okay, so we now have got this front has all been, we have our top stitching done. And we are ready to work on our fly guard. Now, I placed these 2 pieces together, right sides together, and I have just gone ahead and sewn a 5/8 inch seam. And now I'm going to go ahead and trim this seam. You can trim it and grade it, and then with that curve, we've got to go ahead and notch that out. So we're going to just go ahead and do this. And you can grade it too if you'd like, especially if your fabric's a little heavier, you're going to want to grade it. If you've got a real lightweight fabric, it's not as necessary. Sometimes my scissor just kind of doesn't cut what it's supposed to. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then let's notch this curve out a little bit. And then we're going to go over and turn this right side out and press it real well. Okay, I think that should be good. All right, we'll go over and iron now. Now, something that I really like to do is try to press that seam open at the beginning. Can't always press that curve open, but this will help us to have a little bit more control over the seam. And I'm going to try to press as much of it as I can open. Okay. And then we're going to turn this right side out, just like this. And then you can see we can easily press this. And so we want to have a really nice curve there. Okay, and so now what I want to do is I want to seam finish this long straight seam right here. And so I'm going to go ahead and just serge that real quickly. Okay, so now we have got, I have just finished serging this, and so I have a nice finished edge there. And we're ready to press one more thing on this, and then we're going to be doing our final steps. So we're just going to take and turn this under about 1/4 of an inch, and we want to press that seam right here that has been serged. Okay, so I'm just going to come over here and press this. Now, something that's a little strange, I'm going to tell you about that here in just 1 second. Okay, you can see how I've pressed this. But notice, you see, here's where our little dot was, and you can see there's about 3/8 of an inch between the dot and between that fold that I just finished pressing. Now, it's really important to realize that that's the way it has to be. If you try to fold your fabric so that that fabric is even with your dot, then you don't have anything to attach to this, you don't have fabric to attach to this side of your zipper. So keep that in mind. It's not going to be even right down here, but it's going to work out beautifully for you. Okay, so let's just come over here. I always like to lay this on a flat surface when I'm working with this. And we're just going to be taking and placing this folded edge right on top of our zipper tape. Now we want to make sure that this front should be even with the top of the fly on this side. If we pull it up too far, what's going to happen is you're going to have this big bunch down at the bottom, and that is just not a good look on most people. So, okay, the next thing is if you have it down too far, you're going to have extra fabric on this side. So it's really important that you have that nice and even. And so I just line that up, make sure it's even at the top, so you can see right here how it's matching up. There's not going to be any bumps or lumps down here at the bottom, and that's exactly what we want. Now snuggle this right up, okay? You want to have your fabric just kissing the coil, so you're having everyone snuggle. Okay, and so we're going to just place this just like this, and I'm just going to put some pins in. I'm pinning through my zipper tape to hold that in place. Okay, and then we're going to be basting this into place. Okay, and you can see down here at the bottom now we've got fabric that's covering that zipper tape like it's supposed to be. Right. And so once again, we're going to go over here to the machine. I've got my zipper foot on. I still have it on. I'm going to change my stitch length to basting. And I want my needle position to be all the way over to the left. And I'm just going to baste. I don't want to baste close because we're going to actually be sewing close, and it's always kind of a hassle to try to take out basting after you have sewn through it. So we just kind of back off a little bit here. So I'm probably a little bit more than 1/8, but a little less than 1/4 of an inch from that folded fabric there on that seam. Go. And you're not going to be able to sew all the way down, but just get as far as you can. All right, and so there's my basting already done. Okay, now we're just so close to being done. Okay, you can see everything looks even and nice and straight. Okay, so we're going to flip this over. We're going to work on the back now, and we're going to lay our fly guard right on top. And we want to line it up with our top stitching that we did through the right side. And so we just line that up so it's nice and even. And we're going to go ahead and pin this into place. And I'm just going to pin it on this seam side. Now the reason I'm doing that is because when we turn it over, we want to be able to get to the other side so that we can actually do our stitching. Okay. All right, then you can see. All right, so now I can get to that stitching. So I'm going to go ahead once again. I'm going to change my stitch length all the way down to normal stitch length, about a 2.2. And I'm going to sew close to that folded edge. And I'm going to back stitch at the beginning. And if you need to, you can take those pins out from underneath if they're getting in your way. You can tell I'm coming up on another one right there. And sew down just as far as you can. Okay, so you can see I've sewn all the way down to the bottom, and I've done a little back stitch there, and now you can go ahead and take out that basting stitch. Okay, all right, we've got two little steps left. Okay, first thing what we're going to do, we're going to do a little bar tack at the bottom. That's going to make it look really nice and professional. So I'm going to go ahead and change back to a normal foot, and I want to do a zigzag stitch. So I'm going to change my stitch to a zigzag. I want to decrease my stitch length to probably about a 0.5, okay, and I'm going to decrease my stitch width so I'm at about a 2, and then I'm going to sew just above the bottom of my top stitching here. I just want to do a little stitching right across the top, just to kind of hold everything in place, and that's just going to help it to lay really nice. Now make sure that you get everything squared away. You don't want to be having something folded when you do that. And so about 1/4 of an inch below that, or above that top stitching, we're going to go ahead and do our bar tack. And so these should just be itty bitty tiny little zigzag stitches. And I just go off the edge there. Okay, there we go, a little closer. Now what I usually do for this too is I don't back stitch. I will take those threads, pull them to the back, and tie a hand-tied knot right back here. Okay, so you do that on both sides. All right. The other thing that I want to do, I want to be able to cut the top of my zipper off, but I can't do that until I have stitched across the top of my zipper. So I'm just going to go ahead and open my zipper up. I just line up the edge of my presser foot here, and I'm just going to sew right across the top. And I usually sew 2 or 3, 4 times just because I don't want that pull tab to come off. Okay, so you can see my stitching right here. And then I'll cut my threads off. I'm going to go over to the other side and do the very same thing. And I'm just going to back stitch 2 or 3, 4 times just because I don't want to have problems. Clip off all your threads. And we are done. Okay, I want to show you. Okay, so now when I zip the zipper up, it will only go up to the stitching, and I can just go ahead and cut the top of that zipper off, ready to put my waistband or my yoke on, and it's good to go. All right, there you go.